And day 2 at Gettysburg. The day 2 battle was actually very specific. It was only at the fringes, both sides of the Union lines. First one was at Cemetery Ridge, the extreme right of the Union line. Not a whole lot happened there, but the Confederates did try and move up. They were able to move a little bit, not a whole lot. The other one, of course, was the extreme left. That was actually very complicated, and that's where the vast majority of the battle took place, and the most memorable moments of day 2 occurred with the Little Round Tops. And here it is. Well, if you don't know where I am on the battlefield, this is Cemetery Ridge. This is the end of the, basically the end of the Union line, in a way. These are people doing the audible tour. Here's where they had the 108th New York Infantry. And this is where they, this is at the hook, the extreme right. The extreme right of the Union lines. You can see out all over there. Across there is where Pickett would make his ill-fated walk. See the size of these guns. This was important high ground to have. Gave them a lot of command of the battlefield. As you can see here, we are on East Cemetery Hill. Over there is Culp's Hill. This is the extreme right flank of the Union Army. It's actually odd is that the Union on this flank was actually outnumbered. Something like 3-1. There were more Confederates on this flank than there were Union troops. But as you can see, they did have elevated positions, and they had some very elevated positions, so it would have been a steep climb to get up here. That statue back there is to Hancock, who was a platoon sergeant or something like that. He ran for president in 1880 and lost to Garfield. You can see these strong positions. The hill was occupied forces at noon. This is where they... Yep. This is extreme right. You can tell why they did it. After they fell back through the town. This is General Major Oliver Otis Howard. Okay. But the battle started over there, skirmishing, and the Union just kept falling back until they fall back here. This was their last line. If the Confederates had figured out how to advance a little more, they would have definitely broken the Union, and the battle would have been a whole lot different. Of course, after fighting all day and marching all day, I would imagine the Confederates were a little tired. They probably looked up that hill and went, God, no, we're done. I can't walk up that. So this right here is the Longstreet Memorial. Edward Longstreet, commander of the 1st Corps, took over after Stonewall Jackson was accidentally killed. Stonewall Jackson, who was accidentally shot by one of his own people, dies probably more because of medical care than anything else. I mean, they used to believe in like the healing powers of mercury and leeches back then. But here we're on the extreme kind of right of the Confederate Army. This is where Pickett would have been. His troops would have been back in these woods to march out and head in that direction. So they would have been nearly like a mile long and slowly all converging on that one point. And basically, as soon as they stepped out into the light of day, they would have been fired upon from those two hills. The one on the right is Big Round Top. The one on the is that Little Round Top. Now, directly in front of us is the peach orchard, and Devil's Den should be over there. Now, for some reason, yeah, Longstreet, who his claim to fame will be after the war, he actually becomes a Republican and runs for office, and he even writes a book. He blames Lee in this spot right here for the the loss. So like if they hadn't done it, if they hadn't if they hadn't done the Pickett's charge, what Longstreet wanted to do, he was kind of ahead of his time when it comes to tactics. What he wanted to do was redeploy around the Union and make them attack him on ground of their choosing. But he was overruled because Robert E. Lee didn't want to retreat in the face of the enemy. So it's, yeah, and just like on the Union side, they have all these little markers that say where different divisions were located. You know, here's the first. Saw the Florida monument. Yeah, they're a little less grandeur than the northern states. You know, but they wanted to honor the men, but not, you know, too boisterous about how. So Longstreet's would have been his command would have been around here somewhere. All right, here's Mississippi's monument to the Mississippi Volunteers. Here's where, I guess, the right of Longstreet's division, even though most of it was engaged in trying to take Little Round Top, the people here decided that they were going to take the peach orchard. So these Mississippi people, this is, okay, so Barksdale charged the peach orchard. He was able to take it. By riding in front, he ended up getting shot. So those houses were not here. Look at this right now. So, ooh, an observation point? Huh. I'll see if I can get on that. That's another one. This is where Mississippi regiments were. Extreme right. Okay, you can look at all of it. All the way back there is Cemetery Ridge. You can kind of tell, you kind of have to use the monuments as your guide. So, see here. See the big spire? That's the Vermont one. Blocked by that tree would be the Pennsylvania one. So this would then be looking out all over the field, seeing it all. But here, that's the peach orchard. Over there is somewhere would be Devil's Den. Right there is Little Round Top, Big Round Top. Little Round Top would be the scene of the most scenic, the biggest battle of the most crucial part of the Battle of Day 2. The battle on Day 2 on the other side, I guess the Confederates got close, but they weren't that close. And they probably couldn't have carried the hill had they even dislodged some of the Union. Wow. Take it all in. Well, this place on the battlefield, right over there, you can see the trees, is actually the peach orchard. This is the farthest that Sykes marched his wing of the army out to. Through that gap in the trees, that's Little Round Top. So he walked off that hill all the way down here into like kind of this open field. What was he thinking? This actually showed a lot of fierce battling. I missed the turn for Devil's Den, so I'm not going to Devil's Den. But you can kind of see from where he walked out pretty significantly, because right back there would be where the other Union lines were. He walked out all on his own. And this is where some pretty significant battling took place. See, you can see the trees there. I guess those are peaches. It was so fierce that I think in the span of 2 hours, it shifted hands 4 times. So the Confederates attacked, drove the Unions off. The Union counterattack drove them off. Then the Confederates and whatnot. When the Confederates finally did take it for good, it was turning into a rout as you actually drive through those woods over there, there's a ton of monuments. There was a whole lot of fighting that occurred through there. It was a lot of close quarters combat because of all the trees and whatnot, as the Union was slowly pushed back. It would have been a rout except for troops on Little Round Top came to the rescue and saved them. Man, what was he thinking? My only guess is that he didn't understand how much that terrain would give him an advantage. I mean, by giving up the forest and Devil's Den, he still would have overwhelming superiority in position alone. The battlefield is strewed with monuments to divisions of where they made their gallant stands. Well, as fame goes, the Valley of Death. From fame goes, this is Little Round Top. Now, the thing about Little Round Top is it's kind of the crucial point of the second day's battle. Now, the story of Little Round Top goes, this is where the line was supposed to come. Now, Sickles, who was in charge of this, decides that he doesn't like this. For whatever reason, he's got the high ground, and he's got a pretty steep hill, which would have made it difficult for anyone to approach up here. Decides to march his troops down to Devil's Den and, well, into those woods and those fields over there in order to set up defensive positions there. Longstreet, being probably like not a stupid person, what it instantly noticed is that if he just kept going right and took this hill, he'd have a commanding view of Devil's Den in that whole area. Not only that, out there would be the whole right side of the Union line. And he would have a very easily defensible position. Not only would the position be incredibly defensible, you could set up cannon and pepper them all day long. Like free and clear without any near. So instead, he came up around, well, through those woods and tried to come up this side. Well, apparently Meade and a bunch of other generals noticed the mistake and they rushed troops up here. Apparently, it should have been easy to defend. It wasn't, because the Union troops got here at almost like just before the Confederates, so they didn't have time to dig trenches or to make any kind of fortifications. So while they did, the high ground and had superior buildings, rocks and whatnot, they did not have the time to really fortify up. As I'll head to the 20th Maine, where the 20th Maine was the extreme right. And that's where kind of the crucial point of this. Because after the Federals were pushed out of the Devil's Den, the Peach Orchard, and they came running back this way, the Union was able to kind of counterattack and stop the Confederates because they had been fighting all day. Not only that, most of them had been marching most of the night before. I mean, in reality, what Sickles should have done is just dug in up here. He would have made it basically virtually impossible to attack this position, at least head on, which the Confederates actually did, so he would have actually slaughtered them if he had time to build fortifications. And he could have just let them have that land over there, and he would just have to worry about his flank. And, well, probably no one would try and right flank him without, because he would have had a great position to just absolutely obliterate these people. You got to be careful when you're like
talking military tactics, mainly because hindsight, it may seem very obvious to us now, but we're so used to like you know, simulated games and you know, battle tactics of everyone of using. So the 91st Pennsylvania, they are the ones who held this here. I guess there was a sharpshooter battle that was occurring after the Confederates took the Devil's Den. Unions were firing down there, and they had the definitive advantage being elevated. Little Round Top. Right over there is Big Round Top. No one talks much about Big Round Top because not much happened there. After this battle, the Union will occupy Big Round Top. See, the reason the Confederates didn't take Big Round Top is Big Round Top would only give you an advantage to take Little Round Top, which the Confederates thought was not guarded. And in order to use Big Round Top, they would have had to spend the day cutting down trees. So they were trying to death blow, because one of the things they don't talk about is that the Confederate Army's on borrowed time, because the longer it's in Union territory, the more their supplies dwindle. So they had to press the attack. Well, here we are at the small monument which marks the 20th Maine. This is where Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain was told to hold this ground at all hazard. He was the extreme left of the Union line, and he arranged all his men along this ridge. Now, the way I understand the battle to go, they only got here and they only got a few minutes, so they piled the rocks as best they could. It might have been about this height, maybe a little smaller, before Alabamans started streaming out through the woods, coming up this way. They kept moving right, trying to get around them. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain actually sent a Company B off in that direction to kind of like scout for them. They ended up getting pinned down. And for about an hour, the Alabamans just come wave after wave after wave at him. Chamberlain has the advantage of having, one, the elevated ground, and limited protection. We've got protection with trees. He's got protection with rocks that I think they only came up to their knees. Maybe a little below, but everyone was bending down to try and give themselves the most advantage. Wave after wave comes down. And then when they're practically out of ammunition, Chamberlain comes up with the brilliant idea of having a bayonet charge. And what he does is he takes his left flank and he swings it like a door coming down, and right as the Alabamans are coming up. So the Alabamans run right into it, and it turns out the Alabamans were also exhausted and they're running low on ammunition as well. His Company B, which he thought was lost, then rises up and fires on the Alabamans. The Alabamans mistake that to think that Chamberlain's getting reinforcements, and they end up getting routed and pushed on back. And the day is saved. And Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who will eventually die of his war wounds. I guess he gets wounded like 3 or 4 times and dies when he's 79, years and years later. Still amazed at how many people are up every morning and walk the Confederate Avenue battle line. But this is where that happened. Man, I wouldn't feel good just sitting here. You know, you only had time to pile up the rocks to like your knees, and you'd be like, Jesus, well, my chest is still exposed. But they definitely had the advantage. They definitely had the advantage. This was the line. I mean, obviously they've changed it because they put the walkway in. That's a tour. And who knows how much of this is original. This might actually be the original line for all I know. I know they were able to build a small wooden fence, a small stone fence by the time the Alabamans. They were only here a few minutes before the Alabamans showed up. Ooh, there's something over there. Yeah, the Alabamans kept coming on, kept coming on, kept coming on. Oh. 20th Maine. This was the extreme left. This is where they, this is the furthest left it went. Now in Gettysburg, the movie, they say like afterwards they went to the center. I don't know if that's true. Amazing. You know, you highly doubt that the guy knew at the time he was doing something that would be immortalized. He was just doing a soldier's duty on the 20th Maine.
So there was my little spiel on day 2, and well, just got to do, obviously, of course, day 3 next, and this is Gettysburg.